Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of Loomer Unleashed. I'm your host, Laura Loomer. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about how Donald Trump has always been a champion for victims of human trafficking, and we're going to contrast his record of being tough on human traffickers and the cartels and other individuals and organizations that are trafficking children and women into this country and around the world. And we're going to contrast that with Ron DeSantis' record of allowing for people who participate in human trafficking and the sexual exploitation of children to get off easy. Now, you may have noticed that everybody in the country seems to be talking about human trafficking at the moment. Why is everyone talking about human trafficking? Well, it has a lot to do with the fact that a marvelous new film named Sound of Freedom just came out, and it's performing quite well at the box office. In fact, just this week, it surpassed over $100 million of ticket sales because so many people are enthralled by this movie that has a powerful and captivating message about how we can all work together to combat and expose human trafficking, which unfortunately happens to be a very lucrative multi-billion-dollar international business for those involved in human trafficking. And on the evening of July 19th at his Bedminster Golf Resort in New Jersey, Donald Trump actually hosted Tim Ballard, who the film is about, as well as the actor Jim Caviezel, who plays Tim Ballard in Sound of Freedom. The reception at Bedminster was widely attended by many conservative influencers and pundits, and President Donald Trump and guests sat through the nearly 2-hour film about human trafficking. Now, some people have argued online that Donald Trump only had this showing of Sound of Freedom at Bedminster to pander, but that is a lie, because if you look at President Donald Trump's documented record from his time in the White House as president, he actually had a lot of policies and measures to crack down on human trafficking. And if you take a look at the Trump White House website and press releases on the website from Donald Trump's time in the White House, there are numerous documents that show his commitment to ending and combating human trafficking and protecting innocent children. In a statement, Donald Trump said, "We renew our resolve to redouble our efforts to deliver justice to all who contribute to the cruelty of human trafficking and will tenaciously pursue the promise of freedom for all victims of this terrible crime." And what exactly did President Trump do as president to combat human trafficking? Well, in January of 2020, he recognized the 20th anniversary of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, and he signed an executive order on combating human trafficking and online child exploitation in the United States. Through this executive order, President Trump created the first ever White House position focused solely on combating human trafficking. President Donald Trump also used his immigration policy to crack down on dangerous cartel terrorists and human traffickers who were trying to smuggle innocent children across the United States border. As president, during his first term, President Trump signed 9 pieces of bipartisan legislation to combat human trafficking both domestically and internationally. And if that resume on combating human trafficking isn't impressive enough, on October 19th, 2020, President Donald Trump also released his National Action Plan to combat human trafficking. In a statement, President Trump said, "At my direction, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and other federal agents have arrested more than 5,000 human traffickers over the last 3 years. We are dismantling criminal organizations as we disrupt the financial infrastructure of these networks. U.S. law enforcement consistently collaborates with Mexican law enforcement officials to annihilate human trafficking networks operating across the southern border." And that's exactly what President Trump has promised to do in his second term once he's elected as the 47th president in 2024. Not only has President Donald Trump doubled down on his commitment to combating human trafficking once he's elected for a second term as the 47th president of the United States, but he has also previously and frequently promised on the campaign trail to give the death penalty to drug traffickers. And as we have seen play out with our border crisis here at the southern border, where we are currently being invaded by millions of illegal alien invaders, a lot of times the drug smugglers and the human traffickers are one and the same, or they operate within the same network. During President Trump's first term in the White House, he ordered federal agencies to conduct over 1,600 new investigations into human traffickers in their networks. President Trump also directed the DOJ to fund anti-human trafficking task force to work with state and local law enforcement officials to combat human trafficking. Along with using the power of the executive branch to combat human trafficking, President Donald Trump also used his position to work with faith-based leaders throughout the country to provide vital faith-based assistance programs to survivors of human trafficking so that they could restore their lives and find support groups. According to his National Action Plan to combat human trafficking, Trump's administration also funded the largest package of Department of Justice grants to combat human trafficking in United States history, which included the first ever funding for safe housing opportunities for survivors nationwide. President Trump's decision to host Tim Ballard and Jim Caviezel at Bedminster to screen Sound of Freedom isn't the first time the president has hosted an event directed at combating human trafficking. In January of 2020, President Donald Trump hosted a historic White House summit to combat human trafficking. In an interview with Fox News following the showing of Sound of Freedom at Bedminster, Jim Caviezel told Brian Kilmeade of Fox News that he knows that President Donald Trump is going to combat and end human trafficking once he gets back into the White House. And he said that for these reasons, it's imperative that President Donald Trump get reelected as president in 2024. Now, let's compare President Trump's stellar record of combating human trafficking with the record of Governor Ron DeSantis. Despite the fact that Florida has several laws on the books combating human trafficking, including fines for hotels and other institutions of lodging that facilitate human trafficking, Ron DeSantis has gone easy on hotels that have participated in human trafficking and have violated Florida human trafficking laws. In November of 2022, just days after he secured re-election, there was a report that came out that was published by the Florida Sun-Sentinel that revealed that 6,669 hotels and other lodging establishments had received 14,279 citations since a 2019 sex trafficking law required them to make changes to protect victims. And what did Ron DeSantis do about it? He declined to enforce the fines against these hotel establishments. According to the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation, not a single fine was issued against any of these hotels and lodging establishments in Florida after they violated sex trafficking laws. It really makes you wonder, why isn't Ron DeSantis being tough on human traffickers and people who exploit children sexually? After all, it was Ron DeSantis who said during a press conference that Florida would have a zero-tolerance policy for people who participated in human trafficking. I guess that was yet another lie by Governor Ron DeSantis, because clearly there isn't a zero tolerance if the governor isn't going to use his authority to issue fines against these hotels. And if you've been reading my Substack and following my investigative reports, then you know that prior to becoming governor of Florida and prior to serving in Congress as a representative from the state of Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis had a career in the Navy as a prosecutor. And what a lot of people don't know about Ron DeSantis' record as a prosecutor in the Navy is that he repeatedly cut plea deals and gave lenient sentences to defendants who were convicted of child pornography crimes. In one particular case, Ron DeSantis actually cut the perpetrator's sentence from 30 years down to 6 years. That's disgusting. Ron DeSantis should be ashamed of himself. And this wasn't just a one-time thing for Governor Ron DeSantis as a prosecutor. In fact, in one other case, Ron DeSantis cut a deal with a sailor who was facing child pornography charges. And what did that deal include? Well, that sailor was supposed to be facing a maximum 10-year sentence, and Ron DeSantis made it so that he only received a 6-month prison sentence. Why on earth, as a prosecutor in the Navy, was Ron DeSantis so focused on making sure that child predators and child pornographers had lenient sentences? It's something that the governor should respond to. And while Donald Trump has publicly acknowledged the Sound of Freedom movie, even going so far as hosting a screening of it at Bedminster in New Jersey, Ron DeSantis hasn't said a single word about the film. And it really makes you wonder, where does Ron DeSantis stand with the Sound of Freedom movie? Is he actually committed to combating child pornography and the sexual exploitation of children? Is Ron DeSantis actually committed to combating human trafficking? Or are these empty promises and tough words for the sake of gaining re-election? Donald Trump walks the walk and he talks the talk. He has a proven record of combating human trafficking. And in comparison, Ron DeSantis appears to just be all talk. Sure, he's publicly said that Florida has a zero-tolerance policy for combating human trafficking, but when you look at his record of cutting plea deals for child pornographers and going easy on hotels and lodging establishments in the state of Florida that facilitate human trafficking, Ron DeSantis isn't actually doing much to protect these innocent children and victims. Donald Trump has a record of helping victims of human trafficking, where if you look at Ron DeSantis, Florida actually ranks 3rd in the entire country for reports of human trafficking. Tampa, Florida actually ranks as the 12th worst city in the United States for human trafficking. So Florida is a hotspot for child predators, pedophiles, and people who are trying to traffic humans into slavery. And Florida has a lot of work to do so that we can reduce our numbers of human trafficking and not be such an embarrassment to the rest of the country when it comes to our efforts to combat human trafficking. We know that Donald Trump is tough on immigration and that his policies worked in securing our border. However, under Governor Ron DeSantis, as I have previously reported, Florida is being invaded on a daily basis by migrants who are coming through the ocean from places like Haiti and Cuba. And don't think that they're not trafficking people across the seas. They are. And when you combine that with the fact that Florida has a very large immigrant population due to the fact that we have a large agricultural industry here in the state of Florida, there are a lot of people who are falling prey to human traffickers, and they are essentially modern day slaves. A lot of these people happen to be children. So I implore Governor Ron DeSantis to do more than just talk. I implore Governor Ron DeSantis to actually end his failing presidential campaign and get back to Florida and fulfill his promises to Floridians, one of which was combating human trafficking, because as I've just shown you, he's not exactly doing such a great job. I'm Laura Loomer, and if you enjoyed this content, please be sure you subscribe to my Substack, lauraloomer.substack.com. It's free to subscribe, but if you want to support my independent journalism, you can subscribe for $7 a month or $70 a year. Also, please be sure that you're following me on Twitter, Gab, Getter, and Truth Social at Laura Loomer. I'd also like to take a moment to thank the sponsor of this episode of Loomer Unleashed, Goldco. Banks are getting bailed out, and who's going to pay for it? You are. They say that taxpayers won't pay, and they say that other banks will pay. But how are those banks going to get the money? They'll probably raise your bank fees like they always do. And if the Fed step in, you'll likely also be paying an inflation tax. In times like this, storing all your money in a bank may be very risky, as we have seen. So what can two average Joes like you and I even do about it? You can protect your wealth with gold and silver, just like so many other Americans and even banks are doing right now. Call 855-317-5157 or visit goldco.com/Laura Loomer to learn how to protect your savings with gold and silver. Take action today to protect yourself and your family from financial collapse. Again, call 855-317-5157 or visit goldco.com/Laura Loomer and learn how you could get up to $10,000 in bonus silver while supplies last. That's 855-317-5157 or goldco.com/Laura Loomer. Thanks for watching. See you next time on Loomer Unleashed.